Today we're doing lesson 5.3, which is adding and subtracting unlike fractions. It is 5.3 and it starts on page 231. So adding and subtracting. Unlike fractions. Your objective today is students will add and subtract unlike fractions. Yesterday's lesson was about adding and subtracting like fractions. When they say like fractions, what they mean is that the denominators are the same. To add and subtract, you have to have the denominators the same. So the problems that we were doing yesterday were actually much easier because the denominators were already in the form they needed to be. Tonight, when it says unlike fractions, it means that the denominators are not going to be the same. So our first step is going to be to make the denominators the same, then to do the adding and subtracting just like we did yesterday. Another thing that's good to know is that in the last chapter we worked on least common multiple. If you can do your least common multiple work fairly quickly and even in your head, it makes finding that common denominator a lot faster. So that's why we worked on least common multiple in the last chapter. Let me show you an example. Let's say we have 5/12 plus 1/3. We cannot add them the way they are because the denominators, which means down on the bottom, the numbers on the bottom are not the same. So what we have to figure out is what's a number that we could make 12 and 3 into. So we're looking for the least common multiple, the smallest number that they both go into. They both go into 12, so we can both put them into 12. The least common multiple is going to be 12. Now, what I'd like to do is write directly below what the new fraction would be. We're looking for equivalent fractions. Now the first one was in 12ths the way it was written, so that one can actually stay the same. The issue is with the second one. We need to figure out what fraction is equal to 1/3 but is written in 12ths. It has to be equal because otherwise we're changing the problem. We don't want to change the problem, we just want to adjust it so that it's easier to work with. Here's what you do. You decide, 3 goes into 12, how many times? It would be 4. So that means the denominator is 4 times bigger. That means you take the numerator and you make it 4 times bigger. 1 times 4 is 4. 3 times 4 is 12. 1/3 and 4/12 are equivalent or equal fractions. Now they're really easy to add. The denominators are the same. Your answer's denominator stays the same. And 5 plus 4 is 9. And then when you're done, you just have to make sure it's as simplified as possible. 9/12 can be simplified. They're both divisible by 3. So 9 divided by 3 is 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. Our simplified fraction is now 3/4. Okay? I'm also going to do a subtracting example for you. Okay? We'll start with kind of a easier one. Let's do something like negative 5/6 minus 7/9. Okay. The denominators are different, so we need to look for a number that 6 and 9 can both go into. What you're looking for is the least common multiple, the smallest number they both go into. Hopefully you can kind of start doing that a little bit better in your head. I'm just going to count by 9s. 9, 18. Oh, 18 works, right? They both go into 18. So I'm going to rewrite the problem as 18ths. Now don't forget your negative sign, your subtract sign. You have to be careful that you copy everything correctly. Sometimes kids forget to copy some of those negatives and then that makes their answer wrong. 6 goes into 18 3 whole times, and then 5 times 3 would be 15. So we made this entire fraction 3 times bigger. Now 9 can go into 18 twice, so we need to make the whole fraction 2 times bigger. That means 7 times 2 is 14. Now, we know that the denominator stays the same. Now we just have to subtract the numerators. make it into a money story. You owe me $15. You owe me $14. That means you owe me $29. Now we have an improper fraction. We cannot leave improper fractions because it's considered not simplified. So I'm going to make sure my answer is negative. I'm going to ask myself, how many times does 18 go into 29? I know it goes in there one whole time. We're going to have 9, 10, 11 left over. So our answer would be negative 1 and 11 eighteenths. 11 eighteenths is simplified, so I'm finished. The next thing that we need to work on is the mixed numbers. We need to do an adding and a subtracting of the mixed numbers. Let's try this one. Negative 4 and 2/5 plus negative 2 and 6/11. Okay. So what I'm going to start by doing is making those both improper. I'm going to rewrite it so that they're improper fractions. 5 times 4 is 20. 20 plus 2 is 22/5. And that was negative. So I'm going to be really careful to not forget my signs. Now I'm going to add negative. 11 times 2 is 22. Plus 6 is 28/11. Okay. I now have an adding problem, but I have different denominators. So I need to ask myself, what's the least common multiple, the smallest number, that 5 and 11 can both go into? They can both go into 55. So that's the number I'm going to use. 55, 55. Make sure you put all your negative signs in there. Okay. 5 goes into 55 11 times. 11 times 22. Okay, you have to be able to do 11 times 22. It's 242. 11 goes into 55 5 times, and 5 times 28 is going to be 140. Now my denominators are the same, so I know that my answer is going to be over 55. Make a money story. I owe 242 and I owe 140. It means I owe a lot, so it's going to be negative. I'm going to add those together to see what I get. That should be 283. So I owe 382, and it's over 55. Now I do have to simplify that because it's improper. Okay, have to ask myself how many times can 55 go in there. My guess would be about 6 times. Then you're going to have to check your guess. Over here I'll just do 55 times 6. See how close I was? That's 30, 33, 330. Yep, if I add another one, it's going to be too much. If I add another one, it'll be 385. And that's too big. So 6 is the right number, but I have a lot left over. I have 382 minus 330. It's going to be 52 left over. 52 over 55. And if I think about it, is there a number that goes into 52 and 55? No, I think that's simplified the way it is. So my answer is negative 6 and 52 55ths. Okay? The last thing I want to show you is with monomials. Okay, so now we did some of the easier adding and subtracting. We worked with a mixed number. Now we're going to work with the monomials. Okay, so let's do a over 2 minus a over 6. Our denominators are different, so we need to find a number that we could make them the same. I know that 2 and 6 both go into 6. By the way, 2 and 6 both go into 12. And they go into other numbers as well. If you pick the lowest number, the least common multiple, it'll save you work later. You won't have to do as much simplifying. But if you accidentally picked a number that works but is bigger than the least common multiple, that's okay. It is just going to cause you an extra step in simplifying later, but it will still get you the same answer. Okay? I'm going to use 6 because that's the least common multiple. 2 goes into 6 3 times. So 3 times A is 3A, right? 3 times A. The 6 is fine the way it is, so I actually just leave that alone. Don't forget it's a subtract problem. And now my denominator stays the same. What is 3 A's minus 1A? 2 A's. And then remember in chapter 4 we learned how to do the simplifying. If you have 2/6, that's really 1/3, and you still have your A. And then we also learned that you do not need to write the 1 on the top. You don't have to write 1A. So you take that out. Your answer would be A over 3. Write down any questions you have, and we can go through them in class tomorrow.